How did my birthday party end with a court summons in my hand and my husband's eyes colder than I'd ever seen? What happens when a so-called joke about my affair turns into evidence, and my entire family stops speaking to me? This is the story of how one drunken confession destroyed the life I thought I controlled. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I should have known better than to invite Mason to my 35th birthday party. But there I was, standing in my perfectly decorated living room, watching him nurse his fourth beer, while my husband Caleb quietly rearranged the cheese platter for the third time. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, but I convinced myself I had everything under control. "Ophelia, this spread is incredible," my friend Jessica gushed, sampling the spinach artichoke dip. "You always throw the best parties." I beamed, straightening my new silk blouse. "Well, you know me. I believe in celebrating life properly." My eyes drifted to Mason, who was leaning against the kitchen doorway with that familiar smirk. He looked good. Too good. His dark hair was perfectly tousled, and that black button-down shirt I'd helped him pick out last month fit him like a glove. Caleb appeared at my elbow, his jaw tight. "Maybe we should start cutting the cake soon," he suggested quietly. "Ella has school tomorrow." "Oh, lighten up, honey," I laughed, perhaps a bit too loudly. "It's not even 9 o'clock. Let people enjoy themselves." My mother-in-law Linda shot me a disapproving look from across the room where she was talking to my brother Simon. She'd never liked me, always thought her precious son could do better. The feeling was mutual. "Mum, can I go to my room?" 10-year-old Ella tugged at my sleeve, her face scrunched with confusion. "It's too loud down here." "Of course, sweetheart," I said, kissing the top of her head. "Sweet dreams." As Ella disappeared upstairs, Mason pushed himself off the wall and sauntered over. "Hey, birthday girl," he drawled, his words slightly slurred. "Having fun at your fancy party?" "Mason, maybe you should switch to water," I suggested quietly, glancing around nervously. Several guests were within earshot, including Linda, who was now watching us with hawk-like intensity. "Water? On Ophelia's birthday?" Mason laughed too loudly. "Come on, we're celebrating. Besides, I have so many good memories with our birthday girl here." He winked and my stomach dropped. Caleb materialized beside us, his face carefully neutral. "Mason, there's coffee in the kitchen if you'd like some." "Coffee?" Mason scoffed. "Caleb, buddy, you need to loosen up. Your wife knows how to have a good time, don't you, Ophelia?" He nudged me with his elbow, and I forced a laugh. "Mason's just being silly," I said quickly, my voice pitched higher than usual. "You know how bartenders are. Always the life of the party." "Oh, I'm definitely good at keeping things interesting," Mason continued, swaying slightly. "In fact, Ophelia and I have been having lots of interesting conversations lately. Haven't we, sweetheart?" My blood turned to ice. "Mason, I think you've had enough." "Enough?" He threw back his head and laughed. "I haven't had nearly enough. Just like our little afternoon meetings. Can't seem to get enough of those either." The conversation around us began to die down. I could feel eyes turning in our direction, including my mother Vera's worried gaze from the sofa. "What afternoon meetings?" Caleb's voice was deadly quiet. Mason's eyes lit up with mischief. "Oh, didn't she tell you? We've been catching up. A lot. Sometimes at my bar, sometimes at that little motel on 5th Street. You know, the one with hourly rates." He laughed again, but this time it sounded more like a bark. The room fell completely silent. I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking, marking each excruciating second. Linda's wine glass was frozen halfway to her lips. Simon's mouth hung open. Even the background music seemed to fade away. "Mason, you're drunk," I said desperately, forcing another laugh. "Everyone knows you say crazy things when you drink. Remember that time you claimed you dated Jennifer Aniston?" But the damage was done. I could see it in Caleb's face. the way his features went completely still, like he was carved from stone. His hazel eyes, usually so warm and kind, looked right through me. "Is that true?" he asked quietly. "Of course not," I said quickly. "He's obviously had too much to drink. You know how he gets." "Actually," Mason interrupted, swaying dangerously, "I get very honest when I drink. And honestly, Caleb, your wife is amazing in bed. Just like she was in college. Some things never change, you know?" The silence that followed was deafening. I watched in horror as Caleb's face drained of all color. Linda set down her wineglass with a sharp clink. Vera gasped audibly. Simon just stared at me, with his mouth hanging open. "I think," Caleb said in a voice I'd never heard before, cold and measured, "the party is over." The last guest left at 9:47 p.m. I know because I watched the digital clock on the microwave change while I mechanically loaded dishes into the dishwasher, my hands shaking with each plate. Caleb hadn't said a word since Mason's little performance. He'd simply stood by the front door, thanking people for coming in that same, terrifyingly calm voice, while I tried to salvage what was left of my reputation. "Caleb, we need to talk," I said as he flipped the deadbolt. He walked past me into the kitchen without acknowledging I'd spoken. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I could hear Ella's bedroom door close upstairs. She'd been listening. "Look, I know what you're thinking," I started, following him. "But Mason was completely drunk. You saw how much he had to drink. He was talking nonsense." Caleb opened the refrigerator and pulled out a beer. His movements were precise, controlled. He twisted off the cap and took a long drink before finally looking at me. "Nonsense," he repeated flatly. "Yes, nonsense. Drunk rambling. You know how he gets when he's had too much. Remember his birthday 3 years ago when he claimed he was related to the Kennedy family?" "That's different." "How is it different?" I could hear my voice getting shrill, but I couldn't stop it. "He was drunk then. He's drunk now. The man has problems, Caleb. I've told you that." Caleb set his beer down on the granite countertop with deliberate care. "The difference, Ophelia, is that 3 years ago he wasn't talking about sleeping with my wife. He wasn't talking about that tonight either. He was making inappropriate jokes because he's jealous. He's always been jealous of what we have." "What we have?" Caleb's laugh was bitter. "And what exactly do we have, Ophelia?" I felt a flash of anger. "We have a marriage, Caleb, a family, a home, things that matter, things that Mason will never have because he's a 40-year-old bartender who lives in a studio apartment." 34, Caleb corrected quietly. "What?" "He's 34, not 40. The correction hit me like a slap. How did he know Mason's exact age? "That's not the point, isn't it? You seem to know a lot about his living situation for someone who claims he's just making things up." I could feel the conversation slipping away from me. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Caleb was supposed to be angry at Mason, not questioning me. I know because he complains about it constantly. Every time I run into him at the grocery store or the coffee shop, it's the same sob story about his rent and his tiny apartment. "You run into him a lot?" "It's a small town, Caleb. Of course I run into people I know." My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Simon. "Are you okay? That was intense. Call me if you need to talk." At least someone was on my side. Simon understood what it was like to live with someone who sucked all the joy out of everything. His ex-wife had been the same way. Critical, paranoid, always looking for problems when none existed. "Your brother texting?" Caleb asked, glancing at my phone. "He's worried about me, about us. He thinks you overreacted tonight." "Does he?" "Yes, he does. And so do I. You stood there like a statue while Mason humiliated both of us with his drunken fantasies. You should have thrown him out the minute he started talking crazy." Caleb took another sip of his beer, studying my face. "Is that what I should have done?" "Yes, you should have defended me. Defended our marriage. Instead, you just stood there and let him make a fool of all of us." I was trying to process what I was hearing. There was nothing to process. It was the ramblings of a drunk man who's bitter about his own failures. Ophelia. Caleb's voice was quiet, but there was something in it that made me stop talking. Look me in the eyes and tell me you haven't been sleeping with Mason. I met his gaze without flinching. I haven't been sleeping with Mason. The lie came out smooth as silk. I'd always been good at lying. It was practically a survival skill in my line of work. HR required a certain amount of creative truth-telling, especially when dealing with difficult employees or delicate situations. But Caleb just nodded slowly, like he'd expected that exact response. "Okay," he said. "Okay." I felt a surge of triumph. "So we can put this behind us?" "I need some air," he said, setting down his beer and walking toward the back door. "Caleb, where are you going?" "For a walk. It's almost 10:30 at night." He paused with his hand on the doorknob. "I know what time it is, Ophelia." "How long will you be gone?" "I don't know." And then he was gone, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the lingering smell of birthday cake and the sound of the dishwasher humming. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Crisis averted. Caleb might be moody for a few days, but he'd get over it. He always did. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Simon. "Mum called. She's worried. Said things got weird at the party. Want me to come over?" I typed back quickly. "No need. Just Mason being Mason. Caleb's being dramatic as usual." "Hang in there, sis. Some people just don't know how to have fun." Exactly. That was exactly the problem. Caleb had forgotten how to have fun, how to be spontaneous, how to make me feel alive. When was the last time he'd surprised me with anything? When was the last time he'd made me laugh until my sides hurt, the way Mason did? I finished loading the dishwasher and wiped down the counters, restoring order to my perfect kitchen. Tomorrow, this would all seem like a bad dream. Mason would be embarrassed and apologetic. Caleb would realize he'd overreacted. Life would go back to normal. It had to. The next morning, Caleb was gone before I woke up. His side of the bed was cold, and his work clothes were missing from the closet. He'd left coffee in the pot, though, still warm. A small peace offering, maybe. At the office, I threw myself into work, determined to put the previous night behind me. I had a sexual harassment complaint to investigate and 2 exit interviews to conduct. Normal, manageable problems with clear solutions. "Morning, Ophelia," my colleague Janet chirped as she passed my desk with her usual enormous coffee. "How was your birthday party?" I looked up sharply. Janet lived across town and hadn't been invited. How could she possibly know about the party? "It was lovely, thank you for asking." "I heard it was quite the event," she continued, hovering by my desk with poorly concealed curiosity. "Sarah mentioned there was some drama." "Sarah?" My neighbor Sarah had been there last night, standing right next to the dessert table when Mason made his little announcement. Of course, she'd already started spreading it around. "Oh, you know how these things go," I said lightly. "Someone always has a little too much wine and says something silly." "Mm-hmm." Janet's eyes gleamed. "Well, I'm sure it will all blow over." But her tone suggested she hoped it wouldn't blow over at all. By lunch, I'd fielded 3 more casual inquiries about my exciting party and caught 2 people whispering by the copy machine who stopped talking the moment they saw me. The gossip mill was already churning. I met my friend Rachel at our usual spot, a little cafe downtown where we'd been having lunch dates for 3 years. Rachel had been at the party too, but she was discreet, trustworthy. "So," she said without preamble as soon as we sat down, "what the hell was that about last night?" Or maybe not. "Mason had too much to drink," I said, scanning the menu I knew by heart. "You know how he gets." "Ophelia," Rachel leaned forward, lowering her voice. "He basically announced to your entire party that you 2 are having an affair." He did not announce anything. He made some inappropriate jokes because he was drunk and jealous. Jealous of what? Of what Caleb and I have. A stable marriage, a beautiful home, a family. Mason's never had any of that. Rachel stirred her iced tea thoughtfully. But why would he be jealous enough to make up something so specific? I mean, he mentioned a motel by name. Because he's bitter and pathetic, I snapped, then immediately softened my tone. Look, I know it was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable for me, too. But Caleb and I talked it through, and we're fine. You're fine? We're fine. Rachel nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. Okay, if you say so. We ordered our usual salads and made small talk about work and the weather, but something had shifted. Rachel kept glancing at me like she was trying to solve a puzzle, and her laugh sounded forced when I made jokes. Walking back to the office, my phone rang. Mom. Ophelia, honey, I've been thinking about last night. Mom, please don't. That young man was very drunk. People say things when they're drunk, stupid things. At least someone was on my side. Exactly. Thank you for understanding. But sweetheart, you need to be careful. People are going to talk. You know how this town is. Let them talk. Anyone who knows me knows it's ridiculous. Of course it is, Mom said quickly. But maybe you should keep your distance from Mason for a while, just until things settle down. I'm not going to change my entire life because of gossip, Mom. I'm not asking you to change your life. I'm asking you to be smart. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a few minutes, trying to collect myself. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. Everyone treating me like I was guilty of something when I was the victim here. I was the one who'd been humiliated at my own birthday party. I was the one dealing with a husband who'd rather take long walks than talk to his wife. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your husband deserves to know the truth. My blood went cold. I stared at the message, reading it over and over. Who could have sent this? And what truth were they talking about? Another message appeared, this time with an attachment. Screenshots of text messages between Mason and me from 2 weeks ago. Mason, can't wait to see you Thursday, same place? Me, 2 p.m., don't be late this time. Mason, worth the wait, trust me. Me, it better be. My hand started shaking. These were real texts, but taken completely out of context. We'd been planning to meet at his bar to discuss his job application for the hotel where my friend worked in management. I'd been helping him with his resume, but looking at them now, without context, they looked intimate. Another message. Forwarded to your husband's email. He deserves better. I called Caleb immediately, my heart pounding, straight to voicemail. Caleb, it's me. Please call me back as soon as you get this. It's important. I tried his office number. His assistant said he was in meetings all afternoon and couldn't be disturbed. The rest of the workday crawled by in a haze of anxiety. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every time someone walked past my office, I wondered if they'd seen the screenshots too. By 5 o'clock, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove straight to Caleb's office building and waited in the parking garage by his car. When he finally appeared at 6:15, his face was carefully blank. We need to talk, I said. Do we? Caleb, I got some texts today. Someone sent you screenshots of messages between Mason and me, didn't they? He unlocked his car without looking at me. Yes. They're taken out of context. We were discussing a job opportunity. I was helping him with his resume. At a motel? What? No, at his bar. We never mentioned a motel in those texts. Caleb finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my stomach drop. No, Ophelia, you didn't mention it in the texts. Mason mentioned it at your birthday party, in front of 30 people. He got in his car and drove away, leaving me standing alone in the parking garage, finally understanding that my carefully constructed world was beginning to crumble. The next morning brought a new humiliation. Ella's school pickup line had always been my social hour, chatting with other moms about weekend plans and school fundraisers. Today, conversations died when I approached, and several women found urgent reasons to check their phones. Hi, Jennifer, I said to Ella's best friend's mom, someone I'd known for 3 years. Oh, hi, Ophelia. Jennifer's smile was strained. How are you? I'm fine. Looking forward to the weekend? Mm-hmm. She glanced around nervously. Well, I should go find Emma. She hurried away, leaving me standing alone by the flagpole like I had some contagious disease. When Ella climbed into the car, she was quieter than usual. How was school, sweetheart? Okay. She stared out the window. Emma's mom said she can't come to our sleepover anymore. My heart sank. Did she say why? She said they have family plans, but Emma looked sad about it. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Well, we'll find something else fun to do. Is Daddy still mad at you? The question caught me off guard. Why would you think Daddy's mad at me? He slept in the guest room last night, and this morning at breakfast, you both looked like you were going to cry. Smart kid. Too smart. Daddy and I are just working through some grown-up stuff. It has nothing to do with you, okay? But Ella's worried expression told me she wasn't buying it. At home, I found Linda's car in my driveway. She was sitting on the front porch with a key in her hand, the spare key I'd given her for emergencies. Linda, what are you doing here? I came to pick up Ella. Her voice was crisp, businesslike. Pick up Ella for what? She's spending the weekend with us. I don't think so. I positioned myself between Linda and the car, where Ella was gathering her backpack. If Caleb wants to make plans with his daughter, he can call me himself. He did call. He called me. Linda stood up, smoothing her slacks. He thought Ella might enjoy a change of scenery. Grandma Linda. Ella's face lit up as she ran toward the porch. Are we going to your house? We are indeed, sweetheart. I thought we could make cookies and watch movies. Can I, Mom? Please? I wanted to say no, to keep Ella here where she belonged, but the hopeful expression on my daughter's face stopped me. She'd been so tense lately, walking on eggshells around Caleb and me. I suppose that would be okay, I said reluctantly, but just for tonight. Actually, Linda said, Caleb thought the whole weekend might be nice. The whole weekend? Daddy said I could? Ella looked between us uncertainly. I was trapped. If I said no now, I'd look like the bad guy in front of my daughter. Fine, but I want her home Sunday evening. While Ella ran upstairs to pack, Linda and I stood in uncomfortable silence. You know, she said finally, I never liked you. The blunt statement hit me like a physical blow. Excuse me? I never liked you, she repeated calmly. I thought you were selfish and manipulative from the day Caleb brought you home. But I kept my mouth shut because he loved you, and I wanted him to be happy. Linda, I'm not finished. Her eyes were steel grey, just like Caleb's. I watched you chip away at his confidence for years, making him feel like he wasn't fun enough, successful enough, exciting enough. I watched my son turn into a shadow of himself, trying to make you happy. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you saw him really laugh? When was the last time he talked about his dreams instead of just your dreams? I couldn't answer because I couldn't remember. I hoped I was wrong about you, Linda continued. I hoped that deep down you really loved him. But after what happened at your party, I know exactly who you are. You don't know anything about my marriage. I know my son came to my house at 11 o'clock Thursday night and sat in my kitchen for 3 hours without saying a word. I know he looked like someone had died, and I know that whatever you've done, you've broken something in him that might not be fixable. Ella appeared at the top of the stairs with her overnight bag, and Linda's expression immediately softened. Ready, sweetheart? Ready. As they drove away, I stood in my empty driveway feeling more alone than I had in years. My phone had been silent all day. No texts from friends, no calls from family, except my mother's worried voicemail asking if I was okay. I poured myself a large glass of wine and settled onto the couch with my laptop. Maybe I could salvage some of this mess. I opened Facebook and started typing a post. Thank you to everyone who came to my birthday celebration. Sorry the evening ended on a sour note. Some people just can't handle their alcohol. Grateful for real friends who know the difference between drunk rambling and reality. I hesitated before hitting post, then decided it was perfect. Light, dismissive, putting the blame squarely where it belonged. The responses started immediately. Hope everything's okay. Jessica. Sending hugs. My cousin Marie. Some people have no class. My coworker Janet. But there were others too. Really? That's your takeaway from Thursday night? Sarah, my neighbor. Maybe focus on your family instead of social media right now. Someone named Patricia I barely knew. And then, the comment that made my blood run cold. Your husband seems like a good man. He deserves better than this. Anonymous profile with no picture. I deleted the post immediately, but the damage was done. People were choosing sides, and it was becoming clear that not everyone was choosing mine. My phone rang. Simon. Hey sis, saw your Facebook post. I deleted it. Probably smart. Look, I've been thinking about what happened at your party. Finally, someone who understood. It was awful, Simon. Mason completely humiliated me. Yeah, about that. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. My stomach clenched. Okay. Are you sleeping with him? Simon. I'm serious, Ophelia. I've been thinking about it, and some things are starting to make sense. Like how you always know where he's working, or how you got that information about the apartment complex he wanted to move to. I told you it's a small town. It's not that small, and the way he looked at you at the party, before he got drunk, that wasn't the look of someone making things up. I felt the walls closing in. I can't believe you're taking his side. I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm trying to understand what's happening to my sister's marriage. What's happening is that my husband is being paranoid, and my family is abandoning me based on the word of a drunk bartender. Simon was quiet for a long moment. Ophelia, if you're in trouble, if you've made a mistake, you can tell me. I'm your brother. I'll help you figure it out. There's nothing to figure out. Okay, he said, but he sounded sad. Okay. After he hung up, I sat in my perfect living room, in my perfect house, drinking wine and watching the sunset through my perfect bay windows. Everything I'd worked so hard to build was slipping through my fingers, and I couldn't understand why no one could see that I was the victim here. My phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. Ella's having fun with Mom. I'll be home late. Don't wait up. I typed back, we need to talk. No response. I poured another glass of wine and tried to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so fast. Sunday evening came and went without Ella. Linda called to say she was staying another night because she'd developed a slight fever and they didn't want to move her. I suspected it was a lie, but I couldn't prove it. Caleb came home at nearly midnight, moving quietly through the house like a ghost. I heard him in his office, typing on his computer, then the sound of papers shuffling. When I got up to check on him, the office door was locked. Monday morning, he was gone again before I woke up. At work, the atmosphere had grown even chillier. Janet avoided eye contact, and my assistant seemed nervous when she brought me my morning coffee. I had a feeling my Facebook post had made the rounds, along with commentary I probably didn't want to hear. Around 10 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed Caleb's office number. Hello. Mrs. Vane, this is Patricia from Mr. Vane's office. He asked me to let you know that he won't be home for dinner tonight. He has meetings that will run late. Meetings. Right. Did he say what time he'd be home? No, ma'am, he didn't. I tried calling him directly, but it went straight to voicemail. Same with his cell phone. By Tuesday, I was getting desperate. Ella was still at Linda's house, Caleb was still avoiding me, and I felt like I was living in a house made of glass with everyone throwing stones. I decided to take action. I left work early and drove to Mason's bar. The afternoon crowd was sparse, a few regulars nursing beers and watching sports on the mounted TVs. Mason was behind the bar, polishing glasses with mechanical precision. When he saw me, his face went pale. Ophelia, Jesus, you shouldn't be here. We need to talk. No, we really don't. He glanced around nervously. Look, I'm sorry about your party. I was drunk. I said stupid things. You destroyed my marriage. I destroyed your marriage. His voice rose. Then he caught himself and lowered it. You're the one who's been lying to your husband for 6 months. Keep your voice down, I hissed, sliding onto a bar stool. Why? Worried someone might hear the truth. The truth? The truth is that you got drunk and made up a bunch of lies to hurt me because you're jealous of what I have. Mason stared at me for a long moment, then laughed bitterly. You actually believe that, don't you? You've convinced yourself that none of this is your fault. It's not my fault. You're the one who... I'm the one who what? Forced you to meet me at that motel 12 times. Forced you to send me those texts about how your husband doesn't understand you. Those texts were taken out of context. Were they? Because I remember them pretty clearly. I remember you saying you felt dead inside your marriage. I remember you crying in my car about how Caleb never touched you anymore. Stop. I remember you telling me you were going to leave him after Ella graduated high school. Stop it. And I remember you begging me not to use protection because you wanted to feel something real for once. The words hit me like physical blows. I looked around frantically to make sure no one had heard, but the nearest customer was 3 stools away and absorbed in the baseball game. You're lying, I whispered. Am I? Then why are you here, Ophelia? If I'm such a liar, why do you care what I say? I didn't have an answer for that. Look, Mason continued, his voice gentler now. I'm not proud of what we did. I'm not proud of what I said at your party. But I'm done pretending. I'm done being your dirty secret while you play perfect wife at home. I never asked you to be a secret. Didn't you? When was I supposed to meet your daughter? When was I supposed to come to family dinners? You made it very clear that I was the fun you had on the side, while Caleb was the security you came home to. I felt tears starting and blinked them back. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. And you know what? I felt sorry for him. Your husband seems like a decent guy, and you were using both of us. I wasn't using anyone. I was lonely. My marriage was falling apart, and you made me feel alive again. Your marriage was falling apart because you were having an affair, not the other way around. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Caleb. Don't answer it here, Mason said quickly. I stepped outside, my hands shaking. Hello? Where are you? Caleb's voice was calm, but there was something underneath it that made my skin crawl. I left work early. I'm running errands. What kind of errands? Just errands. Shopping. I see. What store? The question caught me off guard. What? What store are you shopping at? The mall. I'm at the mall. Which store at the mall? I looked around frantically at the strip mall where Mason's bar was located. Macy's. I'm at Macy's. Interesting, because I'm looking at our credit card statement online, and there's no charge from Macy's today, but there is a charge from Murphy's Bar and Grill from 20 minutes ago. My blood turned to ice. I'd bought a Diet Coke from Mason just to be polite. Caleb, I can explain. No need. I think I understand perfectly. The line went dead. I stood in the parking lot staring at my phone, finally understanding that my husband wasn't the naive, trusting man I'd thought he was. He'd been watching, waiting, gathering evidence, and I'd just walked right into his trap. I drove home in a panic, my mind racing through possible explanations. The credit card charge, the bar, the timing. It all looked terrible, but I could still spin it. I'd been confronting Mason, demanding he tell the truth about his lies. I was trying to save my marriage, not destroy it further. But when I pulled into my driveway, I knew something was very wrong. Caleb's car was there, along with a black sedan I didn't recognize. Through the front window, I could see him sitting at our dining room table with a man in a suit. I took a deep breath and walked inside, ready to take control of the situation. Caleb, we need to talk. Ophelia. He stood up, his face completely calm. This is David Chen, my attorney. My legs nearly gave out. Your attorney? The man in the suit stood and extended his hand. Mrs. Vane, please, have a seat. I don't understand. Why do you need an attorney? Sit down, Ophelia. Something in Caleb's tone made me comply. I sank into my usual chair, the one where I'd opened birthday presents just 6 days ago. I filed for divorce, Caleb said simply. The words didn't compute at first. You've what? I filed for divorce. I'm also requesting temporary custody of Ella and a restraining order requiring you to stay away from Mason Drew. You can't be serious. David Chen opened a folder and slid papers across the table. Mrs. Vane, your husband has documented evidence of your extramarital affair, including text messages, credit card records, and witness testimony. Witness testimony? Several people heard Mr. Drew's confession at your birthday party. We also have surveillance footage from the Sunset Motel, showing you and Mr. Drew entering and leaving room 237 on multiple occasions. I felt the room spinning. Surveillance footage. The motel has security cameras in the parking lot, Caleb said quietly. I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago? But Mason just confirmed what I already suspected. You've been sloppy, Ophelia. Different stories about where you were, unexplained absences from work, charges on our credit card for places you claimed you'd never been. I stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. This wasn't the passive, withdrawn man I'd married. This was someone else entirely, someone calculating and methodical and completely done with my lies. The motel manager was very cooperative, David Chen continued. He provided records showing that room 237 was rented 12 times in the past 6 months, always paid for in cash by a man matching Mr. Drew's description. The timestamps match periods when you told your husband you were working late or shopping. Caleb, please, I know how this looks, but how it looks? For the first time, emotion crept into his voice. Ophelia, I have photographs, I have video, I have text messages where you told him you loved him. I never said that. He pulled out his phone and read, Can't stop thinking about this afternoon. I think I'm falling in love with you all over again. Don't let me go back to feeling dead inside. The words hung in the air like poison. I remembered sending that text, but hearing it read back to me in Caleb's voice made me want to disappear. You went through my phone? I cloned it 3 weeks ago. Every text, every call, every deleted message. That's illegal. Actually, David Chen said, in this state, it's perfectly legal for a spouse to monitor electronic devices they own or pay for. Your phone is on your husband's plan. I looked back and forth between them, feeling like a trapped animal. What do you want? I want a divorce, Caleb said. I want custody of our daughter, and I want you out of this house by Friday. You can't take Ella away from me. I'm her mother. You're a mother who's been lying to her child for 6 months, who's been exposing her to the stress and instability of a broken home while pretending everything was fine. I never exposed Ella to anything. She doesn't know about Mason. Doesn't she? She asked me last week why you were always on your phone, smiling at messages when you thought no one was looking. She asked why you started working late so much. She asked why you and I don't talk anymore. Guilt crashed over me like a wave. Caleb, I'm sorry. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. No. His voice was final. We can't. Why not? People work through affairs all the time. Because you're not sorry, Ophelia. You're sorry you got caught. Even now, sitting here with evidence of your lies spread out on the table, you're looking for ways to manipulate the situation. He was right, and we both knew it. David Chen slid another set of papers across the table. These are temporary custody and support orders. You'll have supervised visitation with your daughter until the final hearing. Supervised visitation? She's my daughter. She's a daughter whose mother has been living a double life. The court takes that seriously. I looked at Caleb, searching for any trace of the man who'd once loved me enough to propose on a beach in Mexico, who'd held my hand through labor, who'd built me bookshelves and brought me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings. But that man was gone. In his place sat a stranger with cold eyes and a spine of steel. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore, Caleb said. But I'd suggest you figure it out quickly. The locks will be changed Friday morning. What about my things? You can take your personal belongings. Everything else stays with the house. Everything else? Caleb, I helped pay for everything in this house. With money from our joint accounts, while you were spending our money on motel rooms with your boyfriend. I think we're even. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him understand that this wasn't who I really was. But looking at the evidence spread across our dining room table, I couldn't even convince myself anymore. The hearing is scheduled for next month, David Chen said, packing up his papers. I'd strongly suggest you get your own attorney. With what money? You're freezing me out of everything. You'll receive temporary spousal support, Caleb said. Enough for a modest apartment and basic expenses. The rest of our assets will be divided according to the prenuptial agreement you signed. Prenuptial agreement. I'd forgotten about that. Signed it without really reading it because I'd been so sure our marriage would last forever. Caleb, please, don't do this. Think about Ella. Think about our family. He stood up, and for a moment his mask slipped. I saw pain there, deep and raw and devastating. I did think about our family, Ophelia. Every day for 6 months, I thought about our family while you were destroying it. 3 weeks later, I sat in a courtroom wearing a borrowed dress, watching a judge award my husband primary custody of our daughter and divide our assets according to a contract I'd signed in happier times. My lawyer, a public defender who looked barely old enough to vote, had advised me to accept the settlement. You don't have much leverage here, he'd said. The evidence against you is overwhelming, and judges don't look kindly on adultery, especially when children are involved. Mason never showed up to court. I'd heard he'd moved to another state, gotten a job at some resort bar where nobody knew his name. He'd left without saying goodbye, without any acknowledgement of what he'd cost me. My friends had mostly disappeared. My family was polite but distant. Even Simon had stopped taking my calls after I'd asked him to lie to Caleb about my whereabouts. But the worst part was Ella. During our supervised visits, she was polite and careful, like I was a stranger she'd been told to be nice to. She talked about her new room at Daddy's apartment, her new school, her new routine. She never asked when she could come home because she already was home, just not with me. Do you understand the terms of this agreement? The judge asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Mrs. Vane, I need to hear you say it. Yes, Your Honor, I understand. And I did understand. I understood that I'd gambled everything on the excitement of an affair and lost. I understood that my daughter would grow up thinking of me as the mother who chose a bartender over her family. I understood that Caleb would probably remarry someday, and some other woman would help Ella with homework and drive her to dance recitals and be there for all the moments I'd thrown away. As I walked out of the courthouse, I saw them waiting by Caleb's car, him in his best suit, Ella in a yellow dress I'd never seen before, and Linda holding my daughter's hand. They looked like a family, a complete family that didn't need me anymore. Caleb caught my eye across the parking lot. For just a moment, his expression softened, and I thought I saw a flicker of the man I'd married. But then Ella tugged on his hand, and he turned away, loading my daughter into a car that drove toward a future I wasn't part of. I stood on the courthouse steps, watching them disappear, finally understanding that some mistakes can't be undone, some trust can't be rebuilt, and some prices are too high to pay. But by then, it was far too late to matter.